Are you lost in the world like me? Sometimes I feel like I am walking through the world with my eyes half closed, moving slowly, softly, as though each step might shatter some fragile illusion I've been carrying for years without knowing it. Everything around me seems both too loud and too muted at the same time. Conversations drift by like distant music. People laugh, plan, celebrate, and I am there, but not there. As if my body is present while my mind hovers somewhere between yesterday and tomorrow, between what is expected of me and what I can no longer pretend to be. It is a quiet, pervasive kind of disorientation that does not announce itself, does not demand attention, but lingers in the corners, pressing gently against the edges of consciousness until you notice it, until you cannot ignore it any longer. I have noticed that this feeling has a name, though that name does not make it any less confusing or frightening. Psychologists call it an existential crisis, a term that sounds formal, almost clinical, yet in practice, it is intensely intimate and entirely personal. It is that slow, quiet moment when you step back and look at your own life from a distance and realize that it is, in some way, not yours. That you have been walking a path chosen for you by invisible hands, society, expectation, habit, the quiet hum of fear that tells you to keep moving, keep performing, keep pretending. And in that moment, when you allow yourself to notice, you ask the same impossible question countless times in your mind. What is this all for? Why am I here? What am I even doing with my life? It used to be that these moments were rare, perhaps once in a lifetime, or twice at most. They would arrive suddenly, uninvited, in your 20s or in midlife, like a storm that briefly darkened the sky and then passed. But now they have become a steady companion, visiting in the middle of ordinary days, arriving when you are alone, when the lights are low, when the world quiets down and your mind finally has the space to notice itself. They are no longer rare interruptions. They have become the default rhythm of life. And perhaps that is because the world around us has changed in ways that are both beautiful and cruel. We live in a time of constant connection, yet we have never been more isolated. Every morning begins the same way. The phone in your hand, the scroll, the endless parade of other people's lives, all of them curated and polished, their successes, their vacations, their relationships, their milestones, their edited and perfected highlight reels, flowing past your eyes like water over a stone. And you cannot help but compare. You cannot help but notice the contrast between what they show and what you feel. A life that seems ordinary, insufficient, incomplete. But the truth is that none of it is real, not in the way we imagine. The lies we see are fragments, glimpses, masks worn in public for safety, for approval, for the illusion of control. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is uncertain. Everyone is trying to keep it together, and yet we believe the opposite. We believe that everyone else has figured it out while we are left stumbling, fumbling, pretending, drifting. And in this gap between reality and perception, between the stories we tell ourselves and the truth we rarely acknowledge, the feeling of being lost begins. Perhaps that is also why we are exhausted. Not because we work harder or longer than previous generations, though we do, but because our minds are caught in an endless cycle of options, possibilities, and imagined consequences. Every day demands decision after decision. What to wear, what to eat, whom to see, where to go, what to read, what to watch, what career to pursue, what kind of person to be. The freedom to choose, which might have felt like liberation, has become a weight, a slow and constant pressure, a persistent whisper of doubt that follows you from morning to night. Psychologists call this decision fatigue, and it is a quiet form of paralysis, where even the simplest choices feel monumental, and every decision feels inevitably flawed in the mind before it is even made. There's a concept called the paradox of choice, described by Barry Schwartz, which explains this beautifully and tragically. When we have too many options, our ability to act diminishes,
and our sense of satisfaction shrinks. The more freedom we are given, the more anxious and uncertain we become. And I notice this in myself every day, how I can spend hours scrolling Netflix, unable to commit to a single movie. How I can research endlessly on Amazon without ever making a purchase. How I can imagine a new career path for years without taking the first step, paralyzed by the vastness of possibility and the quiet fear that I will choose wrong. And it is not only the abundance of choice that traps us, it is also the need to construct meaning, to create narrative from the chaos. Humans are storytelling creatures. We have always been. We build narratives around ourselves, simple or grand, to explain who we are and why we exist. Once, these stories were largely given: a family, a trade, a community, a life that unfolded within predictable patterns, within known spaces. Now, we are expected to create our own stories from scratch, to make them remarkable, Instagram-worthy, interesting enough to be told and retold, polished and curated. And if we fail, if our story feels small, mundane, ordinary, then we internalize that failure as a reflection of ourselves. The philosopher and psychologist Rollo May spoke of this tension between becoming and being, between striving to fulfill potential and simply existing. We are obsessed with actualizing ourselves, with becoming someone, with climbing invisible ladders toward undefined goals. And in that obsession, we forget the quieter, simpler act of just being, of inhabiting our own lives, even when they feel small, even when they feel ordinary, even when no one is watching. And yet the ordinary moments are where life resides. The sunlight hitting the floor in the morning, the quiet sound of your own breath, the slow ritual of tea or coffee, the gentle weight of your body against the chair, the soft hum of the world that continues whether you notice it or not. These are not background noise. These are the moments where meaning quietly accumulates, unnoticed but alive. We are also lonely in a way that previous generations never were. Humans are tribal creatures, built for connection, for belonging, for intimacy and trust. For most of history, we lived in small groups, in neighborhoods or villages where everyone knew your name, where you shared labor and ritual, where your place was evident, unavoidable, secure. Now we live scattered, disconnected, traveling for jobs, moving for opportunities, building communities online that lack warmth, physicality, and presence. We may have thousands of followers, but how many people would truly show up for us? How many know the shape of our fears, the texture of our sadness, the small, quiet ways we long to be seen? And in this combination of overstimulation, endless choice, fragile narrative, and loss of connection, the feeling of being lost arises. Not because we are broken, not because we are failing, but because we are awake, aware, capable of reflection, and confronted with a world that no longer offers clear maps, paths, or instructions. Feeling lost is paradoxically a sign of consciousness, a quiet proof that you are noticing the contours of your own life, that you are searching for meaning, rather than sleepwalking through the days. And there is another layer that makes it heavier: the false self. We build versions of ourselves to meet expectation, to belong, to survive, to perform. And the longer we inhabit this false self, the farther we drift from the person we are beneath the performance. We may meet obligations, smile when we don't feel like it, answer questions about our lives with rehearsed phrases, and in doing so, we hollow ourselves out, losing touch with our desires, our instincts, our own rhythms. The more we live to please, to impress, to conform, the more the hollow space inside us grows, and the more we feel untethered, disconnected, lost. But there is hope. There is a path, quiet and slow, small enough to take without grand gestures or sweeping change. First, acknowledge the loss, the confusion, the drifting. Admit to yourself that you are, for now, lost. And in that acknowledgement, there is a strange relief, a first moment of clarity. It is not failure to be lost. It is not shameful. It is human. Next, begin to cut through the noise. Turn off the constant streams of comparison, the endless scroll of other people's lives, the content that convinces you your ordinary is insufficient. Guard your mind as if it were sacred space. Protect it, tend it. Allow yourself quiet moments to notice yourself. Then simplify. Reduce choice. Commit even imperfectly. Choose one path, one small action, and let it be enough. You can adjust later. The act of moving, even imperfectly, is the antidote to paralysis. Reach for connection. Seek people who see you, not the version you perform for them, but the person beneath, fragile, searching, real. Conversation, touch, presence, shared effort, and vulnerability are the anchors that tether you back to life.
And finally, notice what matters to you. Not what is expected, not what looks impressive, not what the world will applaud. What do you care about when all else is stripped away? How do you want to spend your ordinary days? How do you want to inhabit your own body, your own time, your own attention? Write it down. Sit with it. Let it guide you. Even in the smallest acts, the compass begins to appear. The journey of finding yourself is slow. It is uneven. It is filled with doubt, mistakes, hesitations, and moments when you will feel lost again, perhaps more acutely than before. But being lost is not the opposite of finding. It is part of the process. To admit that you are lost is the first act of returning to yourself. To take small, intentional steps of presence, awareness, honesty, is how a life slowly becomes yours. No one has it all figured out. Everyone is improvising. Everyone stumbles. Everyone hides the mess behind a careful facade. The people who seem certain, confident, complete, they are simply better at concealing their uncertainty. If you are lost in the world like me, know that it is okay, that it is human, that it is the beginning of noticing, of listening, of turning toward yourself gently, without shame, without panic, without hurry. It is the beginning of inhabiting your own life, of finding your story quietly, patiently, in the ordinary, the slow, the imperfect, the real. And perhaps when you finally allow yourself to drift without judgment, to breathe without obligation, to take small, honest steps into your own presence, you will discover that being lost is not a curse, but an opening, a door that leads quietly to your own life, and that the soft, patient act of living, moment by moment, breath by breath, is the truest compass of all.